Hey, everybody. Just wanted to join you today and have a conversation with some excellent friends of mine, the Nontoxic Gamers. And I'll just quickly do an intro of myself. I'm Wes Byrd, the CEO of Skullz Incorporated. And as many of you know, that we are very into non-toxicity and team sportsmanship and diversity and integrity in esports. And met the guys here at Nontoxic Gamers in 2019 at DreamHack, and we've just been real tight since. And I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to meet them and learn what they got going on. They're doing good things. And so without further ado, I'll bring these guys in. So Nontoxic Gamers, go check it out at nontoxicgamers.org. They're doing good things. And here with me today is Kendrick and James from Nontoxic Gamers. And I figured I would let you guys introduce yourselves. Kendrick.
Yes. Well, as Wes said, my name is Kendrick Washington, and I'm a YouTuber who turned to now the president of an organization. And so Nontoxic Gamers has been around, initially starting as a community and eventually growing into a nonprofit and obtaining our 501c3 in 2018. And so the organization's goal are to fight against toxicity through education and awareness. And so we've got a big mission.
Awesome. James, how about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Wes. And I'm James Cole. I'm the vice president of the board for Nontoxic Gamers. I actually met Kendrick through work, but we both had similar values, and he brought me on board to help out with some of the outreach and be a more integral part of the community. So I've been with them for about 2 years almost, and it's been a really great road so far.
Awesome. Well, we're here to talk about toxicity in gaming, right? And we all know that it's become an issue. And I think it's kind of interesting that the word toxic has kind of become the cool term, or not necessarily a cool term, but the term that we use to describe, poor behavior. And so, we're going to really focus on that topic. And I'm interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are about toxicity, and maybe you can explain better to the viewers, Kendrick, what that is, and let's describe the problem.
Well, see, great. So that was our first challenge, right? Because toxicity is really a word that lives in between other words, right? It's part of cyberbullying. It's part of all these different things. But I was like, I saw one of my missions was to figure out what is toxicity, and I was surprised what I found, because toxicity is not a new word. It is not a new thing. The original definition of toxicity is still as valid. And so I have it here. So that's one of the first things we did when we started building out the program, is we had to find the foundation and a firm and reputable source of defining toxicity. Here's the formal definition of toxicity. It is a quality of being very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. So, and in my presentation, I go ahead, because a lot of times people don't really use pervasive and insidious a lot, and so people kind of smile, like, they understand. So, but when you start defining, I'll say pervasive, so spreading widely throughout an area or group of people, and then insidious is proceeding in a gradual, subtle, but harmful effect. Okay, so throughout a group of people, but kind of, low key, but with harmful effects. It is such a perfect definition of toxicity, because it's very seldom that you run into toxicity and it's just one person. Usually it's a mob or a group of some type who is inflicting harm on others. But it's a lot of times you're not bashing somebody's face in. You're just saying little things like sarcastic, like, "Oh, you're good. You're so good." Sometimes it can be a little more direct, but it's really just the low, like, to me, it's almost like sarcasm, right? I think the formal definition, lot of times churches, they say sarcasm means to, I think, rip flesh or something like this. How do they find it? But it's sarcasm is something we use all the time, but sarcasm is very detrimental and harms people mentally in so many ways. So once
you have your direct toxicity, which is just kind of like in your face, and then there's this kind of backhanded toxicity that you're talking about.
Yes. And in many cases, there's a lot of sarcasm, and then there are some people who are just, I mean, the reality, Wes, there's just some people who are just amoral. They just don't have compassion for other people. And I've seen definitions, I've seen like different, I watched so much material on toxicity, and a lot of the material made excuses for gamers, well, they're just trying to play the game and they're trying to work hard and they get upset, and then they take that frustration out on others, or they lash out because they're not able to achieve whatever objective. That's not true. The reality is people who are typically toxic have 100% malicious intent and do not care about the feelings, emotionally, physically, or whatever happens to the other individual. That is what I've found. Toxicity has different levels, and I've also found that there are a lot of people who are with those people. There's usually the main guy, right? There's the main perpetrator, or main 2 or 3 guys, or women or gals or people, and then there are the others who are around them, who are through connection or fear of being targeted themselves, allow this behavior, and a lot of times, and it's just because a lot of times people are looking online for a place to belong and connect, right? And sometimes you end up in those toxic pools, and people, and to be honest, unfortunately, the people who observe that type of behavior are just as guilty, because one of the things I do mention to people when I'm talking is, if you saw somebody and they were out on the street beating some person up, potentially going to kill a person, would you just stand there and allow it to happen? Or would you try to stop them? Or would you call the police? Or would you do something? But online, you see people telling other people to go kill yourself, delete the game, all these harmful things. Yes, direct things, or direct racism, sexism, ageism, like lashing out against people because of disabilities, sexual preference, orientation, all these different things. That is not in any way excusable. Should not be allowed.
I think that's a really good description of what toxicity kind of is, and its different levels. And then there's also kind of a direct result of toxicity. And I thought maybe, James, what are the negative impacts that people suffer from when it comes to the result of, or being targeted through toxicity?
So Kendrick painted a very good picture of what the face of toxicity looks like. It can be that in-your-face person, or it can be just subtle comments here or there, constant persisting, telling somebody that they're bad over and over on their team, or that they're screwing up. It's infectious. It's like a virus. And it can be fast acting, or it can be slow, but the end result is still the same. You're hurting people. And as somebody that's been in the competitive gaming community for a long time, I see it almost every single day. And whether or not people are aware of it is one thing, but the impact is always there. You got people that'll quit the game. They'll take that seriously. If you say maybe not if you say uninstall, but if they keep telling you that you're bad, or if they keep, preventing you from getting opportunities, whether it's with your team or whether you're trying to move up a rank even, and you just got people on your team constantly pushing you down, it makes it hard to have that good mindset of, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try and win. Nobody wants to play with people that aren't fun to be around. That's the whole point of gaming, right? Is to have fun. It's to take a step away from the difficulties of everyday life. I want to have fun when I'm playing my games. I don't want to be going into the game and then just have somebody berate me for an hour about why I didn't kill this one minion in time, or go and scout this objective ahead of time.
Yeah, I know that. I think there's some direct, results from people being, negative and insulting and just mean, and it's no different than any other kind of bullying. The recipient in that scenario has issues with their own self-worth, their own, just I guess it can cause depression and anxiety and a lot of things that are issues. But I think that behind, these kids that have grown up behind a veil of their avatar, there's that lack of a filter that is an issue, and then it kind of brings out the worst in a lot of kids, and especially kids, because they haven't learned how to have that filter and how to interact with other people, and I guess you lose that instant ability to have empathy on someone if you insult someone and you're looking at them and they they start crying, or they whatever, you might have empathy for that person. But if you insult someone through a screen, you don't see their face, you don't know anything. And so these kids that have grown up in this new world, this different way of living, haven't grown with parents or mentors that understand the problem, because they didn't have that problem. And now there's a vast lack of mentors in the space, to kind of explain to kids and teach kids, hey, your actions have a direct and opposite reaction, not just in physical space, but even in this digital space. And so what are your thoughts, Kendrick?
Well, I'll definitely. So I used to kind of subscribe to that thought and that mindset also, but being a parent of a kid who was bullied beyond imagination, in her 6th grade year, the absolute terrible things that were done to her face to face. She has food allergies, and having kids who knew she had food allergies to touch peanut butter and threaten to touch her in the face or something like that. That has nothing to do with screen time, And so I've also come to understand a lot about, so it was almost a natural segue. My daughter has, food allergies, and she also has asthma, and so and going through the things and having almost lost my daughter like several times during her childhood due to anaphylactic shock and severe asthma attacks and stuff like that. And then seeing the lack of concern from teachers and stuff like that, because think about our school systems. When kids are being bullied, a lot of times, not all school systems, but a lot of times schools have policies that say bullying is not tolerated here. But then the kid goes to tell them that they're bullied, and the teacher says, okay, well, so stop it. And then you go, and that's it. That doesn't solve the problem. It's going to continue and continue and continue. And the horrible things that I saw being done to kids, because once again, there are no consequences. You and I grew up in the days of these, right? At some point, it was no longer a verbal confrontation. It became physical. People fought out and they got the things out and they got it out the system. And people would think twice, because man, this might turn into a fight. I might actually have to back these words up, But now it's changed, and we've really given the bully the complete advantage, because the bully can go in, they can verbally assault that kid continuously, whether online or offline. And that kid can go tell the teacher or the principal what is the problem is. There's a lack of documentation, and it's not like you're walking around with a camera all the time. So there's no consequence even for person to person, face to face bullying, because once again, it's insidious and pervasive, right? so that schoolyard, that teacher's not there, so there's no witness, And because there's no witness, the behavior continues.
Mm.
So really, I really feel like, and you mentioned our mentors, we have a cultural problem here. This, what happens online and what happens in our schools as far as bullying, is a direct result of maybe us as parents being too busy to truly check in and to hold our kids accountable and bring it, that structure and discipline and just good wholesome human connection. There are things you should not say, right? A few years ago, we'll go back a few years, people would consider profanity if you would say something, a swear word, and everybody's like, oh.
Yeah.
Now the F word is almost as popular as the word and and two.
Yeah.
Society and culture has changed. And so we really kind of live in a culture where it's kind of like free fire. Do what you want, feel, do what you feel. And so, and as more things become available and freer and open and accepted, how do you maintain some sense of order when just about everything is okay? What is the new standard, right? What is the standard for morality? It changes. You can literally walk in. I can meet 5 people here in Florida, and they each have a completely different moral structure, right?
Yeah. I
But
agree.
but there are some. The thing is, but in spite of that, it's not all doom and gloom, because a good example in our presentation just a few weeks ago, their kids who follow me on YouTube, they play Call of Duty with me. And these kids, they probably are not the nicest kids when they're in their normal daily life. But when they come to that stream and they play that game with me, the profanity goes away, the toxicity goes away, and it shows that they have the ability to not be like that.
Yeah.
But they only do it out of respect for me.
Yeah.
And then what eventually happens is, over time, they find that maybe they don't need to curse as much. Maybe they have compassion. And so it's not like it affects everybody, but a lot of kids who are in the environment with me, they see there's something different, or with the rest of our guys. We have other YouTubers and streamers. And when they're around that, they see that there's actually another way. And for some of those kids, it stops them from going down that path of toxicity, or maybe it helps them to understand and see the folly of their ways. Even grown men who come to my stream, the first 2 days that they may play Call of Duty with me, they slip. But even then, they respect me enough to try. And then after about a week, they don't curse at all. No swearing whatsoever. So what that shows me is that there has to be somebody within the lives of our kids and young adults who they respect, who is a moral example, who has some values, and it doesn't have to be religious values, but there are some things that are common to all of us. There's a common decency that still remains, regardless of religion or preference or age or gender or any. There's something that we all have, and there's a sense of decency that is in most of us. It's embedded there.
Yeah.
And so having a role model that they respect makes all the difference.
I totally agree. It's all about mentorship, and as much as we want to teach the kids and preach to the kids and whatever, we need as much to lift up and raise up other mentors, to be like-minded, and to like you've kind of been looking at and studying this a lot. And I had a talk a couple of weeks ago about integrity and diversity in esports, and it made me think about toxicity. And I really think what you've described is a lack of integrity, and which results in toxicity. And so what we need to bring back is honor and integrity, and with those things come a lesson, which have a byproduct of non-toxicity,
That big mutual respect that we used to have. Those places.
Well,
so you alluded a little bit to speaking engagement. So I know that that's what you guys do a lot of. And so maybe you can describe to me what that looks like. So you went to a school, you kind of talked to some kids, and then you invited them to this community of stuff. So explain to me how what you guys, how your boots on the ground are affecting those around us.
Well, it's amazing how. So we met at DreamHack, and DreamHack was kind of our first trial by fire, right? We learned how to
That's what it
do
felt like, at
a big
least.
conference. We learned everything during that 2018 trip on the fly, right?
Yeah.
So a bunch of us pulled our money together and we went to DreamHack, and it was one of the best decisions because I would not be sitting here. And so we had people come through, and what we did, we would just ask them to sit down and ask them were they toxic or non-toxic, right? And we just start the dialogue, because the thing is we don't want to approach things in a judgmental way. And this also is how we do our presentations or our programming. Really, it's and honestly, we call it programming now. Really, we'll be officially launching what will be our first campaign. So this is part of our first campaign, and the main thing is create an environment where people are able to really speak freely, because you can't take people and put them in and kind of talk to them in a way that is completely not relatable for them, right? So if you're too, what is it? If you're too, I guess, polished or too professional, then it comes across like a business speech, right? And the program, and what do kids do when you bring them in and you give them a lecture? They snooze, And so it's the whole point of it is to allow or to present them with an opportunity for them to share, for them to be heard. There's something that's common to everybody, and that's, or just about everybody, and that's a need to be heard, understood, even validated, right? So we're all seeking recognition for some part of us, and so when we have these presentations, it's about opening the door. My whole job there is to open the door and to give them the opportunity to share from their perspective. You're toxic? Tell us why you're toxic. I've heard kids say, well, I feel like, if somebody's bad, I feel like I need to tell them they're bad so they can get better. It's like, okay, let's talk about that, and then you proceed from there. Okay, well, what about this, And so what about, instead of just telling them they're bad, guess what? They're never going to figure out how to get good just by you screaming, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Why not give them some tips, right? Why not say, well, look, dude, if you just did this or you did this, if you chose this hero, or if you stayed with your team, or maybe why don't you look up meta? Look up what meta is. These type of things. You ever think that maybe that would have benefit for you too? Like if you give them the tools, then they're playing on your team or they're in your lobbies, then you want the whole community to grow and get better. That makes it better for everyone, right? So you want to be a builder versus someone who tears down. Right. And so that's what it is. And once they start to open up, man, I can tell you, it's amazing. You hear the thing. Like, one of the things we had to go back to the drawing board and start thinking about is toxicity towards yourself. I'm like, wow, like I didn't know anything about that, right? Like, hold on, wait. So the young lady was speaking, and she was like, yes, and I'm very toxic towards myself, and I was like, wow. And self-deprecation is stuff that a lot of people and a lot of young people deal with.
Right.
So as we're doing this presentation, we've got to be ears. Parents tend to be very big mouthpieces and always barking. Parents need to have bigger ears than mouths, to be honest. And also that the same thing in community. Teachers should always have their ears open, listening for the kids who are in need. And also being able to filter out. There's a lot of kids where the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So a lot of times we tend to focus on, and I learned this through doing missions. And I still, by these principles, I still really apply within Non-Toxic, within my YouTube, within my community. There are people who a lot of times, for instance, if you have a food bank, there are people who will show up all the time who may not need it. right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll get the food and they'll go sell it or something like that. And so the people get the impression that, and same thing, the guy on the street who's the charlatan, who's begging for money. And so then people say, well, I'm not going to give anybody money, because their connection to a homeless person in need is the person who's the charlatan, or the guy who's on the corner, with the sign, who may not be a veteran that's homeless, that gets in his car. They keep these things. And so what people tend to do is you tend to ignore the people who really are desperate, who are not as verbal, are not as loud, because of all the other people that are milking the system, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, what I'm doing is I'm always like, if somebody comes in my stream and they're a problem kid, and I try to help them, and I see that they're not somebody that's willing to be helped at this time, then I'm not going to spend my effort, because there are like 15 other kids who are silent, that have said nothing, who want somebody to care about them. And so I'm not going to burn and waste my time with that person who's not ready, who may not ever be ready, and sacrifice all these other kids who would just love to have an opportunity, or adults, because it's not just kids. We say kids. There are lots of people in their 20s who love to have somebody just to love on them and share with them and talk to them, right?
Right.
And so for me, I'm really just trying to just filter out the noise. I'm looking for those who can help, even the toxic ones. Well, okay, so why you do that? I'm talking to grown men, who are in there. You're bad, eat a, the terms, right? All these terrible things, right? It's like, why do you have to say that? You think about why is it that you feel like after we win a game, we got to say something like that to the team? You won. You've already shown you're good. Why not just, be a good sport, show some class and just, say, hey, GG.
Yeah.
I've actually had guys in games, Wes, who were literally like just saying super horrible things, right? At the end of the game, you guys just got S on and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, you don't have to be a joke, but you guys are good. Y'all really play good. We lost because y'all were a good team. And he paused and he said, well, GG, man. It's just like, I didn't
diffuse. You can totally diffuse if you react. Most of them want to get that reaction, and that they're fishing for that reaction. And
exactly,
whenever you just shut it down by coming back with a compliment, that usually definitely does the trick.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And so it sounds like what you're doing is you're kind of coming into having a little conversation with kids or adults and maybe both at the same time, and say, here's what toxicity is. Let's talk about it. And then opening that conversation and having that two-way conversation and being kind of that mentor in the space, kind of really helping to drive that narrative is awesome. Yeah. So we do have a few points of, I guess, maybe some topics that you guys talk about. So maybe we can give these, the listener an example of a conversation. And so one of those things is like, all right, top tips for avoiding tilt. And, tilt being like, getting angry or upset and stuff. And so James, I don't know if you want to kind of kick this off and, give us some tips. What are the top tips?
Yeah, let's turn it into a dialogue here, actually.
Okay.
Guys. So to first define tilt, you were talking about getting angry at playing, and that's definitely a first step, because getting unsettled from whatever mindset you are in or whatever mindset you want to be in, that's kind of what that tilt is. It's getting unfocused or losing concentration on what you're doing because something has emotionally unsettled you. It could be from somebody toxic. It could be because, you're not playing the way that you want to play today. That goes into that self-critical behavior that we were talking about just before with Kendrick. So see, I'll put you guys into an example and figure out who is tilting in this situation. So let's say that Wes and Kendrick are playing a game together, and they're going head to head in a 1v1. And Kendrick is, let's say that he's. What game do you guys want to play? Let's start there.
It's Call of Duty always for me, so I'm sorry.
Call of Duty's for pansies, man.
Oh man.
Okay. Okay.
You can't say pansy. See, we got to see that's. You got to find another word.
Yeah. I was just trying to be an example of the situation.
Yeah. No, I like it. Okay, so Kendrick and Wes are playing a game of Call of Duty. They're doing a 1v1. They're on the map, and it sounds like Kendrick might be a little bit more experienced with the shooters. So perhaps he's doing a little bit better than Wes, but maybe Wes gets a lucky kill on him, or he does something that was a little unexpected, and then all of a sudden, there's two different things that could really happen here. I mean, the third, which would be great, would be avoiding the tilt altogether. But maybe Kendrick starts getting aggressive towards US, and he's on voice chat, and he's yelling at you, and he's like, "Oh, that was a lucky kill. You're not that good. I'm gonna destroy you for the rest of the game." Stuff like that. That's a little unsettling. It's like, I mean, for me personally, if I'm going to avoid that tilt, if I'm going to not get unsettled by somebody else's behavior, I just get in that mindset of, okay, it's time to beat them. It's time to, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to show them what's up. I'm going to prove that I can be better. But it could also be on the flip side. It could be self-critical with Kendrick thinking, oh man, I'm not doing well. I'm so bad at this game. I should just quit. Everything's falling apart. What am I doing? You can get very introspective very quickly, and people's minds are often their worst enemies when it comes to stuff like this, because the worst things that could ever happen often start in your own head. And so if you're going to avoid tilt, if you're going to maintain that positive mindset, the second something happens in your head, or if somebody else tries to stir up drama, you just have to take a step back. That's the first step. You got to take that step back, and you be like, okay, let's take a look at the situation really and see what's going on. What can I do to improve if I did something bad? What can I work on for next time? I'm doing overall pretty well. I'm doing my best. And that's what really matters, is doing your best, performing with excellence. If you're trying your hardest, then you've already won, because a lot of people don't even put that much effort forward in anything that they do. So if you're giving your all for something and it doesn't go the way that you want it to, or maybe you do a little less well than you were anticipating, then you've already done great. You've already won it in my books. Mm-hmm. It's like, you could have the highest ambitions possible, but even if you don't make it there, as long as you tried your best, as long as you performed with excellence, you've already won. And that's a great step to think about. Just take that step back and remind yourself about why you're doing it. If you're having fun, great. Another thing on that second step, if you're not having fun, get out. I'll say that with any game, because gaming is all about taking that step away, right? I don't know about you guys, but I play games competitively, and I play them almost sometimes as profession, to where it can feel like work. And so I've got other games where I play for fun. If I need to de-stress, I need to relax, I can take a step away from the game. What are some of the things that you guys do when you get tilted and you need to take a step away?
Well, one of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up too is that it's kind of answering your question a little bit, but maybe it's easier to say than it is to do. And I try to teach my kids and others that, and this is a lesson I think that our society needs to know and understand as a whole, and that is that being offended is a choice. And some people don't realize that, and actually getting upset and getting angry, you can have a choice too, to not do that. And I used to be, in my younger years, I used to be pretty, reactive and upset and impatient. And, there was at some point in my life whenever I realized, this is, it's really a choice. And then, so if you make a conscious effort to choose and not let yourself be a victim of the world around you, And in order to not be a victim, you can decide and come to the conclusion that, hey, I have a choice here. And it really dawned on me whenever I was younger, and just frustrated being in line, and just the person in front of the line is just taking way too long, and it's just like he's like, just frustrated, and I decided, and I just wanted to react, right? I wanted to say, could you please hurry up, or what's your problem, but I decided to instead count to 20 or whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to be patient and give this situation 20 seconds. And if the situation does not change in 20 seconds, then I'm really going to let him have it. Of course, that's, and then I'm like, okay, 20, 19, in my head, 18, 17, 16. And suddenly, my temperature is calming down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and by the time I hit that 1 and 0, either the situation is resolved, and if it's not, I'm calm enough to engage the person. Is there something I can help you with? Maybe I can assist you. Do you need to, instead of, and being tilted in this situation. And so I think there's a lot of self-teaching, but it's mentors like you guys that can really help people that haven't gotten there yet to understand how to calm themselves down, or to get to a situation where, or remove themselves from a situation that is toxic, or and all of those good things.
Yeah, I love that example, and to maybe apply it in a gaming sense. It reminds me of something that one of my previous teams and I used to do to be more effective during games, because 20 seconds is a long time in gaming sense. I can count to 20, but in that 20 seconds, your team's over or something like that. We were playing games where it could end in as little as 9 to 10 minutes. So one thing that we always committed to ourselves and to each other as a team was, if you're playing in a pre-made, meaning everybody's together as a group on voice talking, you got your whole team together, your squad. We always made a commitment that we would set aside anything that we needed to discuss. So if something happens that's bad, something that we need to improve upon, something we need to talk about, we always said, okay, we'll talk about it after the game. We'll put it on hold. Let's move on, focus on what we need to do next. So when we're on voice, if something bad happens, you'll have that instantaneous reaction of, dadgummit, or this sucks, or something like that. But we'll always have each other check one another, and we'll be like, okay, we'll talk about it after. Let's move on. Let's refocus. What do we need to do? So I love that. Yeah, it's all about recognizing that choice of you can bring it back, you can rein it in, you can overcome it.
Yeah. Man, you just break your controller, your monitor, and that's how I deal with mine. I just break stuff.
That's true for a lot of people. That's probably where that choice comes in, right?
So having broken my share of controllers, and back in the Halo days, right? So back in the day, right? But even man, just recently, I sit here by my bed, and so I have my scuffed controller, that I paid like $200 for, and sometimes I get frustrated and I'll smash it against the bed, because it's like it's not gonna tear up. And one day I got frustrated, and I was like, dang it! And then all of my paddles on the back of the controller went all over the room. I was like, wow! And I'm like live streaming, right? Like, okay, I got no paddles on my controller. I broke my right paddle, and I'm like, yeah, dog, So, but for me, one of the things that I find is, number one, having someone with leadership abilities on the team is very important, right? Number two, taking responsibility for your actions. Like a lot of times, what I do is I approach it with, we're going in and we're having terrible games, and let's talk about the elephant in the pink elephant in the room, right? The thing is, games are not necessarily geared to be fair anymore. Games are created to keep us engaged and grinding for as long as possible and spend money, right? So you have to factor in the fact that we don't have a level playing field. Like I can guarantee there's no way in the world, and I doubt very many in the Call of Duty community would say that the things that happen in Warzone are just random, aren't, randomly generated sequence. You go and you got two team members down and they put a bounty on you. You got two or three of your team, 3 or 4 team dead, and you get that bounty every time.
Mm.
The reality is gaming companies are orchestrating that experience, and there are many videos out there that are talking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the goal is a lot of times you can't just if you think you can just walk into a game where you're just going to immediately, just based on skill alone, just grow infinitely. It doesn't work that way. You got to learn to deal with the ebbs and flows, right? Matchmaking is going to be weird sometimes. There is skill-based matchmaking. There's adjustments to your aim assist. There are all kind of metrics that the gaming company is playing, puppet master behind the scene to orchestrate an experience, right? Like a lot of times they even talk about tricks. There are videos on like 10 tricks that game developers use to trick your brain or something like that. Like stuff like where you think you're moving and you're not, or you're shooting somebody and they're not taking damage, to give you that sense of that you barely escape with your life. Many videos out there that happens. So you got kids out there and adults like myself who are grinding these games, trying to do their best, and then all of these things are being manipulated. So that one guy who did get away, maybe he shouldn't have, but the orchestrated experience, maybe he did not take damage, for that. And right, and we're talking about games that are played like in Call of Duty. We're talking about things like tick rate. I knew nothing about tick rates. How many times the server updates your information per second. And when you're talking about, like, I can guarantee, I'm making a video of this, every player in the world says man, I got behind the wall, but I still died. Well, that's because the server never received information back, because Call of Duty has the worst tick rates in gaming, instead of it being updated 70 times a minute like Valorant or something like that. So it's all these different things that players are trying to overcome. And that frustration does build up. And it's not, but the thing is, you got to understand that it's not fair. And good players learn to work within the system, or understand the metrics, and understand all these things that you're dealing with. And so the more I educated myself on the game, all of a sudden it was different. So when a player pulled me aside and explained what tick rates were, all of a sudden I wasn't playing out of ignorance, and I don't have to wonder why I didn't get to cover, why I still died. And while on the replay cam, it showed me not getting to cover. That's because I know there are some technical limitations, and I have to learn to play and use those technical limitations to my advantage. Stuff like input latency, all these different things. You see people jumping and shooting all the time. Why are these people running around Call of Duty jumping all the time? Most players who are struggling are not jumping and not sliding, right? They run around the corner and say, I aimed and I shot first. And so the thing is, what I try to do for myself and my team is I try to bring it back to, like, these guys, they want to be the best, the guys that I play with, and the people I run into, they really do want to be good at the game. And so I really try to provide education, and I try to center myself. So I get frustrated, and so I go in and I take leadership in the next game and say, hey guys, well, look, the last game, let's talk about what did we actually do, and then at some point you just have to be the voice of reason. Just have to let go and just understand that this is going to be one day where you're not going to grow. You're going to struggle for 2 or 3 days, right? So I play Call of Duty Warzone. There are going to be some days where I just am not going to get a win. But we win 7 days in a row the previous time. Then guess what you think? Your mindset, I got to win 7 days in a row from this point infinite. It's unrealistic expectations. You got to center yourself, and you got to accept that this is not a linear growth fashion. It is going to be ebbs and flows, and you got to learn to deal with the ups and downs and walk away sometimes. Go drink a Mountain Dew, maybe drink some tea, some ginger tea.
I have a drink right now.
There you go.
Well, one of the things I had to kind of teach that to my son too. He's sitting there playing this game on his phone, and it's like a little fighting game. And he's playing against the AI. It's a free game. He gets all the way up to this particular point, and he knows he's I'm good at this. They've basically programmed him to think, hey, man, you're really good at this.
Mhm.
And then he gets to that last boss, and he's like fighting. He tries it again. He's getting so mad, and I'm like, Sean, they built in the capability for you to lose here. You're going to lose until you pay money. When you pay that money, then you will win. And that's just, they make you think that you're going to get, oh man, I just had him this close this time. I'll get him next time. You know, until finally you give in and give them that money, and then you'll win. So that's
got a lot of mobile gamers in the room.
Yeah.
And that's
I
not
don't want to go back to mobile. I'd rather, it's better to pay $10 or $5 for a game. The people need to understand that. Pay for the game, because the free comes with a bigger price tag.
Yeah.
That you hundreds or thousands of dollars for the free game versus 13 or 10 for the pay game. Yeah.
Emotional trauma.
It sure is. Yeah. Either you sacrifice your time or your money.
You could have avoided with $13.
Is that, yeah, for real, right? Buy the pack. Just go and buy the pack and be done with it.
And that, again, the curating an experience. I remember there's a game I played for a few months, and they've got these different characters, and then you create your lineup of characters, and you go and you battle against both other players, missions, campaigns, whatever. And there were two characters that were the absolute undisputed best characters in the game, and they were paywalled to where there was no free-to-play way to unlock them. You had to the currency conversion was $500 US for the character, and it was. I mean, it was ridiculous because it was undisputed that was the best character in the game, and you've got this lineup, and you're trying to curate your team to be the best that it can be, but at the same time, the developers are saying, "But you could have this one," and it was ridiculous to me. I'm like, this is. Yeah. They put maybe a month or two of development time into this, and they're asking these ridiculous prices for this one thing, but they're playing on people's emotions to be able to make huge amounts of profit.
That is, unfortunately, is smart, right? I mean, they're in a business trying to make money. And so how do you do that? Unfortunately, they know how to do that. And it's a play on the psyche of the player. And that's why I agree with Kendrick in that, you're just better off paying for the game. If it's a one pay, and then I own that game, and then all those games that make you kind of pay to get that better gun or that better character, I won't even log in.
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, what we're touching on, see, and I kind of took us down a rabbit hole there. But part of what when we're talking about toxicity, part of the things that we're going to have to deal with as our organization grows is the developer side of this, right? So, I mean, the thing is, we live in an age where I can say, okay, Google, add Brussels sprouts to the grocery list. And guess what?
Oh, dadgummit.
You didn't just add them to your list, you added them to
I just realized what you were saying.
That's hilarious.
So, so my phone triggered on that, right? So why is it that we don't have AI or language technology built into our game to understand when somebody's calling somebody a racist word or using homophobic slurs, that they can take and they can correlate that with, actual logs, like take a voice. If it seems suspicious, take a voice sample, right? And then all of a sudden, when you start cracking down on players, they start losing this $50 game. They lose access to their intellectual or digital license for this game. That'll make people think twice. So the reality is, in many areas, we've talked about this, there are many areas of society that really could be solved at a company level, right? Because companies are doing things that really allow them to benefit. And so the reality is there should be some kind of AI or voice recognition within Call of Duty lobbies along with the reporting system. I mean, do you know that what's ridiculous? If you don't report somebody while you're spectating them in Warzone, there are 150 people in the lobby. And sometimes the names don't show correctly. So the name that you see in a game might not appear on your console because they have Xbox, PlayStation, and Activision IDs. You have to scroll through sometimes 100, 114, 150 names almost to find the person that was abusing the system, being toxic, saying these things, to click on the report button.
Yeah, it's
That
designed
is
to
unreasonable. Yes.
to hold people accountable.
Exactly. So the thing is, like, if you don't get them at a certain point or are able to spectate them when they killed you or something, it's very difficult. So the thing is, the companies are not really doing the right things. Even companies like Discord, there's so much toxicity that takes place within Discord channels, And so the thing is, what I've been doing. So another thing that I think we didn't mention is that James and I we work in cybersecurity, and so I served as 2 years president of InfraGuard, which is a partnership between the private sector and the FBI to protect the United States. Critical infrastructure gets attacked from terrorists, whether foreign or domestic. And so I've learned a lot from working with the FBI. There are many times in my job where we've had to reach out to the FBI to work with them on things that we've seen, And so one of the things that I'm really trying to understand is at what point does the action become, go from offense to a criminal action? That's another thing that I'm working on, because there are some toxic actions. Like, I mean, people have threatened to hang me in Call of Duty games, just come in. And there are lots of supremacist groups that do recruiting directly in Call of Duty. It's actually documented. If you Google that, you'll see. So white supremacist group use Call of Duty as a recruiting ground. And so there have been numerous racist things that were said to me, and I have those recorded. And so my understanding is, like, okay, at what point and how do we go about taking these things that were a direct threat, right? Being able to hand this over to law enforcement, which that law enforcement can definitely subpoena, right? So they can subpoena what they want to, but the problem is, once again, is it something worth their time? I know the FBI personally, if it's not like $300,000 worth of fraud, they really don't have the resources to look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go for the big fish. And so how do we go about being able to hold people accountable so that when you make those threats in the game, either you can pass it on to law enforcement and there actually be some tangible action, because it really only needs a few examples for people to, like, think about it, right? You don't have to go after everybody. Just go after a few, because and if you also Google, even in Georgia and Florida, there have been people who were arrested for making threats in Discord, kids who were arrested and put in jail for making threats. And so part of my presentation and or part of the campaign when I'm doing a presentation is I talk about when these actions go from being just toxic to actual criminal. So something else that.
That's good stuff. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I'm pretty sure we could continue to do so for another hour. And I would just
never ending road.
I would just love to be a fly on the wall during a conversation, as you kind of mentor these other groups and teachers and students. And I applaud you guys both and your organization for making that your mission to help resolve the problem of toxicity in gaming. And my hope is that you guys help to lift the level of integrity in our world around us, especially in gaming and in kids and youth. And so I applaud you for all your efforts. And I thought I might give you an opportunity to kind of talk about maybe just how schools or administrators or other people who are listening can get involved and help your organization.
Well, I'll tell you, and You know, there are a lot of bad things that happen as a result of COVID, but one thing is we all involved in Zoom meeting became the king or queen. uh, but the thing, and not just Zoom, because Zoom, WebEx, right? Every all these e-meeting and web meeting platforms are now super popular, right? So we now have access to people who we never would because they weren't on these platforms. Our
Mhm.
organization is always ready, willing, and able to speak and present, because this is not something that we just do occasionally. We
Mhm.
lived it. You know, as a YouTuber, I live intentionally within the Call of Duty community. I actually go into public lobbies all the time in matchmaking with the intent and purpose of meeting new people and having dialogue with them constantly. So I am always ready. James, when it comes to a lot of the mobile platforms, specifically like League of Legends, Wild Rift, and League of Legends, and that type of community, I'm more on the shooter side. James is more well versed on, I would say, MOBAs and build style games and our everything else. We also have a member of our team, Rico, who works for university. I won't say which university, but he works for a very big university, and he works in their disabilities department. So he's the IT guy for their disability. So he literally knows so much about disabilities, which is, once again, it wasn't the original part of our mission, right? We didn't understand that toxicity included that, but now that we do, having Rico is super valuable. Because the thing is, we may go speak to our esports team or speak to the school esports, but what about all your students who have disabilities that are playing games? Why don't we get a chance to talk to them too? They would probably want to be heard more than anyone, because everybody's not thinking like that, right? There's certain things, certain protected classes that kind of bubble up to the top. And for us, we want to make sure that people of all protected classes
Mhm.
are able to have a safe and enjoyable experience online by continuing to help to change mindsets. We won't ever eradicate toxicity, we know, but I can tell you we're going to do our best, and we're always willing to rise to the challenge to be able to talk and share information and resources. And as our organization grows and gains more resources, more partnerships, we do need partnerships like yourself, Wes. I mean, the fact that you have us here and give us this platform, meeting your dream hack, all these things. I mean, the thing is, we're ready. We just need partnership and support to
Mhm.
continue to grow and continue to spread the message. So,
Awesome.
and more to come in the future.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, if you guys are interested in learning more about non-toxic gamers, the domain is on the site, on the page here, nontoxicgamers.org. Be sure and reach out to Kendrick and James and all the other guys at Non-Toxic Gamers and see how you can get involved and help be a solution or a part of the solution to this problem.
Thanks, Wes.
Really appreciate you guys for joining me today.
Thank
And
you, Wes.
best of luck. And I know that we'll be working a lot together in the future. And it's great talking to you guys.
Been a
Thank you
pleasure.
for having us.
Thank you very much.